But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the house barrage, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
You can put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, cut and paste a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Dick Cheney's dead. Hallelujah, Dick Cheney's dead. Amen. I've been waiting all week to say that. Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull, called Elise. And so, a few days ago, my mother and I going up to a beautiful wooded area not far from Yellow Springs to just have a nice walk because it was a beautiful day. Gorgeous walk as well. It was great. I got to try out a Lensatic compass that I had been looking to just experiment a little bit with, but I noticed the flags were at half staff all the way up. But I hadn't been online all day, so I hadn't found out. Though, there was a reputed Aryan Brotherhood leader who got shanked in prison, so, that might have been that. And let me just say, we should all wish Ezra Klein our sincerest condolences. Because now he's going to have to write yet another op-ed about how a dead Nazi was practicing politics just the right way. But so I get back, and then it turns out fucking Cheney's dead. It's like, wow. And then I noticed that you can sing that to the tune of It's Raining Men. And so I just did that. And then I got to thinking, because it's like, on the one hand, yes, the world is better without him in it. But on the other hand, he really represents, I think, a sort of inflection point. Because, bear with me, because it's a complicated train of thought. Mine often are. Lots of carriages getting on and off. But I couldn't help being reminded of Jorge Videla, which, if you're not familiar with Argentina, he was the head of the military junta, the US-backed military junta that carried out a neo-Nazi reign of terror for 6 years in Argentina between 1976 and 1982 with the support of the United States and Israel, and is also, despite a lot of Zionist propaganda, responsible for the single largest mass murder of Jews since the Nazi Holocaust. The reason Zionists don't like to bring it up is, again, because Israel provided a lot of the weapons to make that happen, and then refused to take in the Jewish refugees who were trying to get the fuck away from these guys. But anyway, so the dictatorship collapsed in 1981-82, and much like the U.S., right? I don't know how well people in chat remember the U.S. around, say, 2008, 2009, you know, that election and everything. But a lot of, you could be forgiven for not remembering this, because there's a lot of effort and expense that has gone to in order to make people basically forget all about this. But the level of popular outrage, even just within the U.S., at all of the just human rights atrocities of the Bush-Cheney administration was really, was quite impressive. It was on the level, actually, I would say, of the sort of outrage around all of the worst shit that Trump's done. Though, the main difference is that this came first, and that makes things different. Because here's the thing, so people were so just utterly disgusted with the past 8 years that they eagerly voted for, the hope and change guy, with his blank slate, Barack Obama. And a lot of people wrote on that blank slate, which they were basically invited to do because he avoided really saying what he stood for. Though, if you wanted to look it up, you could, and a lot of people, like Paul Street, did some very good writing at the time, pointing out that this guy was not what a lot of people thought he was. If you read his book, you could tell. But a lot of people didn't, and they wrote on the blank slate. One of the things was just a complete clean break. A total, just never again break with all of the horrible shit of the Bush administration. The forced disappearances, the torture, the sending the military out to just fucking grab people and lock them up in secret with no lawyers and no charges, and just torture them for years on end and do fucking medical experiments on them. And then when they were so fucked up from all of that they could not even form a sentence, put them on trial knowing that they would be completely incapable of defending themselves, and then just railroad them. The fake trials, the so-called military commissions that were invented just to convict people the U.S. had taken hostage from all around the world. Because, as the administration admitted, if you were to apply just normal procedure and rules of evidence, there was no way you'd get convictions because there was nothing on them. And all of these things, and people, and not to mention, the fucking criminal aggression against Iraq and Afghanistan, and about 1 million by that point, around 2 million people dead, actually, by that point, as a result of all that. An entire fucking region in flames, and just truly in-your-face corruption, and all this stuff, and people were looking for a clean break with that, and people thought that they had that. And, you can tell that sentiment was really there. It's easy to look at what came after. and think, oh, you know, people must not really have believed that because look at all the stuff that they were willing to tolerate under, like, Obama and stuff like that. And I can kind of understand that. But the thing is, if it wasn't real, then there wouldn't have been any need to do what the Obama administration did, which is to try to make it look good. To have an investigation, to at least raise the expectation that maybe there would be some kind of legal accountability for these just flagrant fucking crimes against humanity and everything, since a lot of people were demanding that. And then there was fucking nothing. And that was a whole period of a whole lot of shit happened for which you would expect a certain amount, of accountability, just in terms of, you know, it's just openly criminal shit, and none of it had any. Like, the robo-signing scandal, in the sort of shadows of the global financial crisis happened, where you had these companies who were, that were forging, electronically forging mortgage instruments by the millions and kicking people out of their homes on the strength of these forgeries because they had transferred the mortgages in order to evade tax to real estate trusts that could not hold mortgages. And since they could not show that trail of ownership, that chain of ownership, in court, or it would void the whole thing, they did millions of forgeries, and then they got caught. And it's like, that's actually a huge criminal conspiracy that just got exposed, that because every single time they did that, the forgery is a crime, using it in court is a crime, trying to obtain a thing of value doing it is a crime. Like, if you wanted to be serious about accountability, you're looking at fucking 6-figure sentences. And then as some minor disgusted Wall Street person, Matt Taibbi, quotes back when he was still doing journalism in Griftopia, says, it's all fucked up, and nobody goes to jail. You know, because Obama wanted to look forward, not backward, and everything. And that's why I can't help thinking of Videla, because there was a lot of the Argentine ruling class who also wanted to look forward, not backward, not dwell on this, not like have accountability or anything. But the people who had lived through, you know, these 6 years of terror, they weren't fucking having that. They insisted on actually having some kind of legal accountability for the murder of 30,000 people, the extreme torture of thousands and thousands more, all this horrible shit. And they ended up, and in order to just calm people down, they went and had a trial. And you can actually go and watch video from this trial, including the prosecutors summing up, which is really, if you were going to do a book of historical summings up, it would probably be right there with the summings up in the Nuremberg trials, and really, and history will absolve me, the closing address by Castro in the Cuartel Moncada case. And he was, so people were trying to draw another line. Both, like, Obama and the Democrats were trying to draw a line under all of the crimes of the Bush administration in the sense of just not dealing with them, except to say that they banned torture, which was bullshit, because torture was already a crime under U.S. law. Like, literally the only thing that you could actually do in order to make it more banned than it already was to actually enforce the existing law against two people who had proudly admitted that they'd broken it. Proudly admitted that they'd broken it in thousands and thousands and thousands of cases. And they didn't want to do that. But in Argentina, because the popular sentiment was as it was, and the popular level of mobilization was what it was, they couldn't get away with that, and so it ended up being another kind of line. They drew a red line, and the prosecutor in the case, Stracera, ends his summing up by saying, without any claim to originality, you have to say, never again. After giving this long speech that is mostly dedicated to an important concept. Sometimes you have to get back to sort of basic concepts to actually see how fucked up things are. And what he ended up talking about is the sort of theoretical role of criminal penalties, and the derivation of this in Western legal theory, going back to something called lex talionis, which is, that's not even bourgeois law, that's pre-capitalist, that is classical Roman law, and it's where we get the word retaliate from in English. The idea of lex talionis was basically the law of payback. Somebody does some shit to you, that you do some shit back to them. And the whole point of bringing this up was that the whole idea of having some sort of agreed upon decision-making instance that would decide what to do with people who did certain shit was to get away from that. Because you couldn't ban people, you couldn't ban payback, essentially, if you weren't at least offering some sort of a credible and effective means of obtaining satisfaction elsewhere. And so he goes into great detail about this, and I just can't help thinking about that, because when you look at, particularly, this century, there have been so many examples, just in the U.S., but not only, where it's where we're just reminded of that, because massive outrages that are actually crimes under existing law are committed by powerful people, like the current and really ongoing genocide in Gaza being just one of many, though a particularly egregious one. And there's no fucking accountability. There isn't even anymore the pretense that somebody might be held accountable. Not in the U.S. You have a bit of a pretense at the ICC, though I have my doubts that that's going to actually go anywhere. But instead, what we have here is that Dick Cheney he spent his life getting the fucking respected elder statesman treatment. He fucking endorsed, the doomed and genocidal campaign of Kamala Cost. And that was something that they bragged about, that the Harris campaign fucking boasted about and advertised. That's not how Jorge Videla spent his last years. You see, he died taking a shit, and we know this because his last shit that he took in prison, where he was sent, despite the efforts of various ruling class assholes to get him out of there, for life, because of all the mass murder and torture and stealing of babies and all sorts of other fucked up shit that he was involved in. And they tried to bury him in his hometown of Mercedes. Except the people in Mercedes heard about it in advance, showed up at the cemetery, said, no, you're fucking not going to bury this prick here. We're not going to have our loved ones buried next to him. They had to do an about face, and they ended up burying him in secret in a private cemetery in a suburb called Pilar. That is the difference between having some level of accountability and not having it. In the U.S., of course, having that level of accountability is the sort of thing that banana republics do. You can't even talk about that kind of accountability. But, yeah, that's where we are, and that's kind of, I think, really an inflection point, because it was the moment where, essentially, there wasn't any pretense of having standards, and the very idea of having any kind of standard of conduct that you would hold officials to, elected officials, started to be something shameful that you should be made to apologize for, or something like that. And And yeah, so it's like, on the one hand, it's good that he's dead. On the other hand, it's fucked up that he lived his last years the way he did. And with that, I bring you a bunch of neocon ghouls talking about Dick Cheney and the lost Republican soul.
Hey everyone, Dick Cheney has passed away, former vice president.
He's passed away for vice president? Okay, let me get that chat window where I can see it with the full screen up. There we go. Can never find it. There's so many fucking widgets on this screen. I was getting better about turning it on while the intro was rolling, but I forgot to do that today.
A guy who, unlikely as it is, wound up being a major force in American politics for I don't know, 20, 30 years.
I'm not sure what's particularly unlikely about it. I mean, he was exactly the sort of person who the ruling class likes to have as a force for, as a political force in the U.S., which is how he ended up having cabinet positions back under like George Bush Sr. too.
Years. I'm JVL from the Bulwark, here with Bill Crystal to talk about Dick Cheney and his life and his legacy.
I've read Bill Crystal, never actually seen him. And now that I look at him, it's like somebody morphed fucking John McCain and Tim Waltz. Just merged them.
And all of that. And Bill, I guess it's interesting in a way that we're now in a world of dynastic politics with like the Bushes and the Clintons and the
I mean, that's not new. Like the Bushes, that already happened.
Trump's,
the Kennedys, let's not forget them. This has been going on for a while. Actually, you can go back further because they were the Harrisons. There are two President Harrisons in the U.S., in the history of the U.S., and they're both related.
Cheney sort of comes from a very different place, right?
Yeah, I believe it's called hell.
Pretty much a self-made guy, comes out of Wyoming, small state with no electoral importance, and winds up as Secretary of Defense and a vice president and
self-made, okay. Dick Cheney biography. Because the minute you hear the word self-made, you know there's going to be a lie there. I mean, let me see. He attended Yale, okay. Yeah, okay, so fucking Ivy Leaguer. Who... Yeah. No, not self-made. This guy was politically connected from the... I mean, that is one of the main reasons you go to the Ivy League. That is why it's so expensive. Because that's where you get politically connected in the first place. And that's basically been... That was his entire fucking story.
Important actor in American politics.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, has this meteoric rise as a very young man. Comes to the White House in 1989. He went to Yale. I guess he...
Well, I mean, who would have thought somebody goes to a minor university like Yale and they end up in cabinet office? That never happens.
Aiken finishes his degree elsewhere, studied some political science in grad school for a year or two. I don't think he got his degree, but he knew a lot, actually, of surprising amount about political science and certainly American history, and obviously his wife, Lynn.
Well, yeah, this is the stuff that he's going to be remembered for, Bill. The amount he knew about political science.
Professional historian. But anyway, he comes to Washington, and I heard about him at the time really through my father's circles, I would say, and just through the newspaper. And he's a junior staffer in the Nixon White House. Ends up as
chief of staff. Oh, he was a mere White House staffer. Wow, what a meteoric rise. Well, he became a cabinet secretary and then a vice president after being a mere White House staffer with Nixon. The administration that is like synonymous in the U.S. with fucking corruption scandals. Even though actually Nixon was tame by current standards. Like, I mean, everybody was more fucked up than Nixon, who came after Nixon.
After Gerald Ford, 5-6 years later, that would have been 1975, so that would have been when he was 34 years old. So the degree, I mean, you actually understated in a way his, I mean, he is White House Chief of Staff at age 34 and ends up in his 80s being a major force as a Republican conservative, genuinely conservative critic of Donald Trump. So that's 50 years, really, right, in the public, in the public eye.
I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, if your point is, wow, that's way too fucking long, I agree. That is way too long.
Running, really, and really, as you say, due to his talents, there was he had no
his talents, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Rumsfeld was his boss in the White House, and I guess was his patron early on, you could say. But it was he, and then he went. But it was entirely due to a self-made man in a way, to great America.
In a way, yeah, you have to add in a way because everybody knows that concept is just a lie.
Story, he leaves the White House after Ford loses, and I remember that he said he goes back to Wyoming, and people.
And he didn't, unfortunately, for like the entire world. He was not bit by a rattlesnake, and he did not fall in a hole, or whatever ways. Wyoming seems like the sort of place where, I mean, falling in a hole and getting bit by rattlesnakes are probably common ways of dying. I don't know. But anyway, so tragically, he survives his return to Wyoming.
Grad school at the time, I guess, but a little bit in these circles, and I hear he's going to run for Congress. There was the Dick Cheney. He's like a consummate inside operator,
right?
Serious, sober guy.
Ooh,
not Mr. Charisma, not Mr. Popular Demagogue at all. This is the late 70s. He was a Ford guy, and Reagan is in the ascendancy in the Republican Party. Runs for Congress, Wyoming, becomes obviously a.
Well, like, I mean, just the level of fanboying. See, this is the thing. This is what happens when you don't force a fucking red line to be drawn again. And the thing is, and I don't think there's anyone in chat who's going to be shocked to hear this. Like, they're not the ruling class won't draw these red lines for themselves. The reason we've got this shit, the reason you can actually be socially acceptable and talk about Dick Cheney, a man with the blood of millions on his hands, an absolute ghoul, a man who actually ruled Iraq for the benefit of a company he held a personal interest in. Like, he put fucking Kellogg, Brown and Root, a company closely connected to his own assets, in charge of the bogus reconstruction of occupied Iraq. I mean, and just the torture and the mass murder, and, like, he's a fucking ghoul. But because no red line was ever really drawn, these fuckers can talk about him like this, and it's socially acceptable. If you were to do this with Jorge Videla, who, it's worth noting, he committed some of the worst crimes in, like, Argentine history, certainly in modern Latin American history. He pales by comparison to any U.S. president, really, just because he did not have the means to commit the kind of crimes you can commit when you're in the White House. It wasn't that he was a better person. It was that he couldn't do that shit because all he had was the military of Argentina and whatever support the CIA and fucking Mossad were willing to give him. But you could not talk about him like this. In fact, I mean, there's video. I'm working on a piece, actually, comparing Cheney and Videla. And I decided to do a search for, like, a video reactions to Videla's death back in 2013, in May 2013. And somebody did a vox pop walking around the streets in Buenos Aires asking people, and it was like, how would you sum up Videla in one word? And everyone's like, piece of shit, murderer, torturer, corrupt was a big one. Yeah, he got, a lot of people said hijo de puta.
And then very quickly becomes, I think, number 3 in the House leadership. I mean, I think literally within 2 terms or something of being elected to Congress. So I haven't had time to fact check all these things since the death was...
Well, I mean, that's really kind of in the spirit of Dick Cheney not taking time to fact check stuff. Like, I remember when they didn't take the time to fact check whether Iraq actually had weapons of mass destruction. Of course, I'm doing a bit here. Obviously, they knew perfectly well Iraq didn't, or they wouldn't have attacked.
Just a couple hours ago, but were announced just a couple hours ago. But anyway, it is really a remarkable career. One shouldn't lose sight of that, just that side of things, in addition to everything else he then did substantively in his different positions.
Well, yeah, well, maybe let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it strikes me that no matter how old you are right now, Dick Cheney was a feature of American politics.
That in itself, that's not a good thing. You shouldn't have, like, the same guy just haunting the fucking halls of power for that long. When you've got that sort of thing happening, and Cheney is hardly even the only example. You got all sorts of assholes in Congress who've been there since they were lying on speeches recorded on 8-tracks. I mean, that's a sign that you've got a problem, actually.
During a period of time which was formative to you, and so if you...
That is a sign that the political class is just constipated, and the shit's just building up.
Came of age during the Bush presidency, George W. Bush's presidency. Dick Cheney is Darth Vader, and he is this...
Well, no. I mean, if you paid any attention at all to what he was doing under Bush Sr.'s presidency, he was already Darth Vader. He was a scumbag all along.
Evil figure who was responsible for all sorts of, not actually responsible, but in the public imagination was...
Well, I mean, what do you mean not actually responsible? He played a major role in all of that. Like, what do you mean not actually responsible? He is generally viewed by, like, serious analysts as the most powerful vice president in U.S. history because of the degree of hands-on involvement he had in these crimes that this guy is just sort of shrugging off here.
Bad guy. If you came of age during the Trump years, he is this voice of conscience.
No, he fucking isn't. I mean, if somebody manages to come of age in the Trump years and has gotten the impression that that fucking criminal is a voice of conscience, that is just a victory of the propaganda system that has... Because this is one of the things the propaganda system is designed to do, give people short memories. Because if you have long memories, if you remember shit that happened a few years ago, or maybe more than just a few years ago, and they come out and suddenly one of these motherfuckers is a voice of conscience, it's like, fuck you, no he isn't.
Who was standing up to Trump.
No, he wasn't.
If you
Not really.
came of age, as you said, during Nixon, he is like, he was this, guy who was an inside operator who was a wunderkind.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and the Nixon administration, let's remember, was also genocidal as fuck. I mean, they gave the order, everything that flies on everything that moves in Laos, a country the U.S. was supposedly not even actually having a war of aggression against. They just decided to attack Laos kind of to test their shit out. Like, I mean, this guy has been involved in the worst fucking atrocities in several generations, actually. Like, if they're, like, what they're really saying, when you actually know the history, which they're trying to avoid people knowing, is that whether you came of age in the time of disco and Nixon, or you came of age at the time of George H.W. Bush and the fucking Gulf slaughter, the first one, or you came of age under George W. Bush and his 2 stolen elections, he's always been connected with the worst atrocities that are going on at that time. And he's a supporter of them. Like, this is...
That's super interesting to me. Just
Well, yeah, I know. It's fascinating, isn't it? It's almost like we have an accountability problem in this country.
so many acts in American public life. He had, like most people get 1 or 2 acts. He had like 4.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, which is like 4 too many.
thinking about this. I mean, there's this category of people who never became president, but who are extremely important in American history, and it goes all the way back to Henry Clay. I think it's maybe the person about whom this was originally said.
The way they're talking about this guy,
Man, not
these
to be
fucking
president in his era.
fanboys.
And John McCain and many others, they ran for, most of those ran for the presidency. Dick Cheney chose not to. He could have in 1996. He'd been extremely impressed with successful Secretary of Defense under George H.W. Bush, and there was a bit of a draft Cheney movement. I was a tiny bit on the fringes of that.
Jesus.
Movement. He chose not to do it.
I mean, I like the idea of a draft Cheney movement in the sense of, like, if he's going to, like, send people to get their shit blown up trying to murder their way through other people's countries, then, I mean, he should get to step on a few landmines himself. I mean, if we're doing it that way, I'm kind of cool with the idea.
And then, of course, Bush taps him in 2000 to run the vice presidential search, and